You're crouched by a fire. It doesn't matter which century. It could be 12,000 years ago, it could be last weekend. The wood pops, the flames lean toward you when the wind shifts, and the smoke curls straight into your face. You cough, you blink, and underneath the cough, something else happens, something you don't have words for. Because nobody around this fire has invented words yet. A warmth behind the eyes, a softening at the edges of the night. You didn't ask for it, you just breathed. Here's the part that should bother you a little. Of everything a human body can take in food, water, anything you swallow or chew, nothing reaches your brain faster than what you inhale. Smoke goes from your lungs into your bloodstream, into your skull in seconds. No stomach, no digestion, no delay. Whatever's in that smoke, your brain feels it almost immediately. And somewhere, sometime, one of your ancestors noticed. That noticing is where this story actually begins. So when did ancient humans start smoking? Simple question. Terrible answer waiting for you. Because smoking isn't one behavior, it's at least 4 wearing the same coat. There's accidental exposure, just existing near a fire. There's ritual inhalation smoke as a messenger to gods or ancestors. There's medicine smoke as treatment. And there's recreation smoke because it feels good. Full stop. Ancient humans didn't experience these as separate categories. We do, because we're the ones trying to reconstruct it thousands of years later with a shovel and a lot of guesswork. And the physical evidence is almost designed to frustrate us. Stone tools survive for millions of years because stone barely degrades. A pouch of dried leaves, a wooden pipe, a handful of seeds under normal burial conditions, that's gone in a few centuries. So when archaeologists say the oldest evidence we have, what they really mean is the oldest evidence that happened to survive. Absence of proof, not proof of absence. Keep that in your back pocket, because it matters later. Let's talk about why smoke specifically. Long before anyone understood lungs or bloodstreams, humans were already living the results of a simple biological shortcut. Burn a plant, and depending on what's in it, you release compounds, some inert, some genuinely psychoactive, directly into breathable form. Inhale them, and they cross into your blood through your lungs almost instantly. Compare that to eating something, where your body has to break it down first. Smoke skips the line. Humans didn't design this shortcut. Your brain has receptor systems, including one that responds specifically to cannabinoid compounds that existed long before anyone burned a cannabis plant on purpose. Those receptors aren't there because of the plant. They're part of a much older internal system that regulates mood, memory, and appetite. The plant just happens to fit a lock that was already installed. So the first time someone inhaled the right kind of smoke, their brain wasn't confused. It responded. And once a behavior produces an immediate, noticeable reward like that, humans are extremely good at learning to repeat it long before they understand why. That's the actual mechanism behind everything that follows in this video. Ritual, medicine, addiction, different eras, different intentions, same biological shortcut being exploited in 3 completely different ways. And it's worth sitting with how strange that is. The same physical process, burn a plant, breathe the smoke, let your lungs do the rest, got interpreted as a message to the gods in one culture, a treatment for a bad cough in another, and eventually a multi-billion-dollar product line in a third. The chemistry never changed. Only the story humans told themselves about why they were doing it. We know controlled fire itself is old, roughly 1 million years old, based on burnt ash and charred bone found in a cave in South Africa, generations before our species even existed. New research published just this year pushes that back even further, to as much as 1.79 million years, based on fresh analysis of burnt bone at the same site. For that entire stretch of time, every hominin who sat near a fire was inhaling smoke, constantly, unavoidably. Most of it was just wood smoke, but not all of it. Early humans living in forested regions of Africa, Europe, and Asia would have regularly been near plants that release psychoactive compounds when burned. Some of those campfires were, by pure accident, getting people high. This isn't a fringe idea, it's a genuinely contested one, and worth being honest about that. Some researchers argue this accidental exposure could have shaped early ritual behavior. Others point out we have no way to test it directly, because as we said, the physical evidence just doesn't survive that long. It's a compelling theory. It is not a proven fact, and we're not going to pretend otherwise. What we can prove gets more specific once humans start doing this on purpose. In a mountain cemetery in Central Asia, archaeologists found wooden braziers containing stones that had been deliberately heated, alongside residue from cannabis plants with unusually high potency placed in a ritual burial context roughly 2,500 years ago. Not wild hemp used for rope. The good stuff, chosen and burned on purpose. Around the same era, the Greek historian Herodotus described a nomadic people called the Scythians building small enclosed tents, heating stones inside, and throwing hemp seeds onto them, then sitting inside, breathing the smoke. For centuries, historians assumed he was exaggerating. Then, archaeologists excavated Scythian burial mounds and found exactly what he described: bronze braziers, heated stones, hemp residue. He wasn't embellishing anything. If anything, he undersold it. Across cultures that developed this independently, the belief was strikingly consistent. Smoke wasn't just a substance, it was a carrier. Something that moved between the living and whatever they believed came after. A shaman inhaling smoke wasn't taking a break. He was opening a channel and treating it with the seriousness that implies. That discipline shows up again and again: specific plants for specific ceremonies, specific people permitted to burn them, specific occasions where it happened at all. Nobody was doing this casually on a random Tuesday. The rarity was the point. When something is treated as sacred, restriction isn't an inconvenience, it's what makes the thing sacred in the first place. Smoke also became medicine, and this is where it gets genuinely strange from a modern standpoint. An Egyptian medical text from around 1550 BC describes treating lung and throat conditions by having patients inhale smoke from heated herbs. The Greek physician Hippocrates, that Hippocrates wrote about inhaling herbal vapors to treat respiratory illness. Ancient Indian medical texts describe an entire practice built around inhaling medicinal smoke through pipes, with specific herbs prescribed for specific conditions. It sounds backwards until you remember the mechanism we just covered. Smoke reaches the lungs directly and enters the bloodstream almost immediately, in a world with no antibiotics, no surgery, and no other way to deliver a compound that fast. Smoke wasn't a wild guess. It was, for its time, one of the fastest delivery systems anyone had. We still use inhaled medicine today: asthma inhalers, anesthetic gases. The delivery methods survived. The burning, thankfully, mostly didn't. Now here's the piece we've been holding back: the actual hard limit of what we can currently prove. In 2021, researchers published findings on a 12,300-year-old hearth in the Utah desert containing seeds from a wild tobacco species that don't grow anywhere near the site. The nearest source was miles away, up a mountain range. Someone carried them there on purpose. This predates any known pipe or pottery in the region by thousands of years, meaning the intent came long before the tools we usually associate with smoking. We don't actually know if they smoked it, chewed it, or sucked on it. The seeds prove intent, not method. 12,000 years ago, humans were spread across every inhabited continent, which raises the real question underneath this entire video. If people in one desert were deliberately burning a psychoactive plant that long ago, what were people everywhere else doing with theirs? We don't have the artifacts to answer that. We may never find them. Organic material this old rarely survives. But the behavioral drive behind it is almost certainly older than any single piece of evidence we'll ever dig up. Some researchers even argue that seeking altered consciousness functions as a deep behavioral drive across species, not just humans. Reindeer have been observed actively seeking out and eating certain hallucinogenic mushrooms. That part's well documented. The claim that elephants deliberately get drunk on fermented fruit is shakier. One study called it a myth outright, though newer research on how elephants process alcohol has reopened that argument. It's a genuinely unsettled debate, not a clean example, and we're not going to pretend otherwise. Here's where the story turns, and it turns hard. For thousands of years, across dozens of independent cultures, smoke stayed inside a framework of ritual, medicine, and careful use. Then tobacco reached Europe in the 1500s, and within decades it stopped being anything sacred at all. By the 1600s, it was a global trade good. By the 1900s, the industrially manufactured cigarette existed, engineered specifically to deliver nicotine faster and harder than any hand-rolled leaf ever could. Remember the mechanism from earlier: smoke straight to the bloodstream, straight to the brain? An entire industry figured out how to weaponize that shortcut on purpose, and they didn't stop there. Through the 20th century, tobacco companies spent decades and billions of dollars burying evidence their own scientists had produced that their product caused cancer. They marketed directly to children. They adjusted chemical formulations specifically to hook people faster and keep them hooked longer. What indigenous cultures in the Americas had spent thousands of years treating as something disciplined and sacred became, in the hands of a few corporations, a product engineered purely for extraction. A shaman and a tobacco executive both worked with the same plant. That is nearly the only thing they had in common. So when did ancient humans start smoking? Honestly, we don't know, and we may never know for certain. The physical evidence takes us back roughly 12,000 years with real confidence, and further than that with reasonable, honest speculation. But the underlying drive, noticing that a burning plant changed how you felt, and choosing to chase that feeling again, might be as old as fire itself. That's not a character flaw. That's the same instinct that let our ancestors learn almost everything else, try something, notice the effect, remember it, pass it on. Go back to that fire. The smoke curling towards your face, the cough, the warmth behind your eyes you don't have a name for yet. Somewhere between that fire and right now, that same feeling got inherited by a Scythian howling with pleasure in a felt tent, an Egyptian physician prescribing smoke for a bad chest, and eventually a tobacco executive deciding exactly how fast he wanted you hooked. The plant changed. The purpose changed completely. The smoke never did. So here's what we actually want to know if that very first breath of smoke 10 or 20,000 years ago was closer to an accident, a medicine, or a prayer. Which one do you think it was?